Hey woodworkers, today we're going to talk about upholstery, and the first thing we need to do is create the frame that's going to take all of the materials to make a soft cushion. So fairly simple joinery. What I've done to start with here is done some floating tenons in here and I've cut the outside shape. There's a subtle taper here, about 20 inches up front, about 18 inches in the back. I don't know that it really matters where this joint lands, if it's between the two sides or if it's the front and the back. As long as we've got some good structure in here, that's the most important part. Biscuits are not going to be strong enough for what we want, because if we think about, depending on the design of your chair, sitting down on these areas is going to put a lot of pressure on this. Sometimes 200 or plus pounds, and yeah, usually that's not done gently. So anyway, so biscuits are out. These floating tins were great, and then we start throwing this together. All right, so for this mallet, I've done a dry fit here. I need my mallet, clamps, obviously adhesive. You're going to find that sometimes clamps, depending on the geometry of this seat, are not always going to be conducive to what it is you want or need to do. So in that application, I recommend using a strap clamp or ratchet clamp for doing this. And the issue becomes, if we're clamping in this orientation here, we really only need clamping pressure here and here and here and here, and that's it. But with the shape of this, as I tighten down this clamp here, sometimes it just slides down this ramp that you've created. This one is subtle. I've done a dry fit already before recording, so I'm fine with this. But depending on what you're doing, you might need to incorporate a strap clamp here, as I've mentioned. And in doing so, what you will want to do is weave this in and around what it is you're clamping, re-thread this thing in, and then you'll have a really tight clamping setup, which is super important for this. You could wrap this around another time or two, but in doing this, you get all the pressure that you want, and yeah, exactly where you need to be. All right, so I'm going to get this out of the way for the time being. I can always throw this thing in if I get started and run into a problem. If you don't have these are life-changing for woodworkers for a bunch of reasons, but irregular shapes are pretty huge, and any type of four-corner environment that you want to glue up. All right, so let me pull this thing out. I'll do a little talking as I'm doing the gluing up. So when creating a frame for upholstery, oops, I need to get pliers. Bear with me. All right, apologize for the delay. So material choices for your framework. You could use a bunch of softer hardwoods, if that's a good way of framing it. I have soft maple in front of you, which makes the most sense. Poplar is okay, but it's not terribly dense enough. It's a little soft, and all of this is a long way around saying we're trying to create an environment that's going to hold several hundred, if not more, staples for the various layers and components of your upholstery. So keeping that in mind, walnut is bad, oak, very, very bad, any of the oaks. Soft maple is great. Hard maple works. It just usually that comes with some really pretty figure, and it's a little bit harder than oak, although not as fibrous. So anyway, soft maple is the way to go. And the other thing you can do is use plywood. So 3/4 inch plywood is great, and cut it to whatever shape you need to. After this is done, and on the plywood as well, I'm going to have to round these corners and these edges all the way around, because anything that we're going to wrap around this, anything that's sharp is just going to degrade that material and start to break it down prematurely. So soften all these edges is the important part. Then with plywood, should you choose to use it, you will need to drill one hole somewhere right in the center. If we don't do that, then there's this really weird thing that happens where the air that's trapped inside the foam cushion has a really tough time to escape, and it usually does so very, very slowly. And so you can tell right away when there's an upholstered piece that has used plywood and also that has forgotten to drill that relief hole, because from when you sit down on the chair and when all of that air escapes takes several minutes, and it's a very slow settling process. So anyway, with one little hole here, all of that air has a place to escape, and it does so rapidly, and it feels pretty much like what you don't think about, which is how it should be done, where you have someone that knew what they were doing and being thoughtful about process and experience. I should also mention that the upholstery that I'm going to be doing for this one falls into the category of a slip seat cover, or a slip seat, and there are different upholstery methods. For a simple slip seat, it has the opportunity to have an internal frame as well as the ability to replace the cover. And the cover is what is generally referred to as the upholstery, but it's the show pieces, the part that we see. Everything underneath what we see is all internal structure, but it all has its important role and benefits and parts. So anyway, here we are. I say this every time I do a video, that I need to stop talking and work. I should do one or the other, not both. So here we are. My next video will be better. Okay, good-ish. This one is good, not great. And a little alignment issue down on this bottom piece. That will get it better. Good and pretty good. I'm sure the audio on that was just delightful. Oops. Okay, as luck would have it, I do need to do this and the other. So you get the added benefit of seeing both. I'm experiencing total zen with my glue process, as I do all of my glue processes, because fortunately up to this point in my professional life, I've made all the mistakes that woodworkers can make, and as it turns out, they all happen at this very moment when we have glue setting and just mocking me as I'm trying to get this thing dialed in. Alright, I'm not sure if I'm going to do much better than this. And it's not for a lack of trying. Okay, that looks better. Cool. Alright, hopefully that was helpful. I'm going to sign off. After this dries, I'm going to show you the next steps, which is going to be starting our upholstery. See you then.